It was all so fascinating. A new world, opening up like a budding flower, and all within his grasp. Zadal Crozius breathed it in, tasted it, felt it. His body responded, soaking up every new sensation, absorbing it all, feeling things that he had no words to describe. The sky was dark grey, hanging heavily with smog. The earth was black, choked with ash. Every surface, every brick and block, was coated with filth. And yet, if you knelt down, pushed your helm close enough, you could see the variation there. The tiny glints of crystalline carbon, the movements of insects across the dirt, still struggling on despite the poisons everywhere. Crozius would reach out with a finger, toying with them for a moment, then crushing their glossy shells. He had been an apothecary before. Back in the world that had been dull and dutiful, he had spent his time patching up lacerations and repairing bones. He had thought himself content with that, at the time. A space marine was an astonishing thing, capable of self-repair in all but the most catastrophic circumstances. The warriors of the 14th Legion were exceptional even by those high standards, having made a virtue of extreme physical endurance. The ones who had come from Barbarus had set the pace, having lived in a world of poisons for so long as anyone could remember. But the Terrans had caught up fast. The message had come right from the top, from the Primarch, repeated over and over. You are my unbroken blades. You are the Death Guard. In hindsight, Crozius wondered how he had ever really taken pleasure in that old life. True, the position had been an honoured one, the apothecaries of the 14th, almost like the Tech Marines of the 10th, charged with watching over the Legion's jealously guarded specialisms. But his subjects had been so dour, so relentless, so uniform. They had never smiled at him, nor offered thanks when he had stitched them up and sent them back to the front. There had been a cloud over them all, a kind of heaviness, dull as stone, turgid as oil. Now though, he limped across the broken ground, his boots sinking deep into sucking clay. Pain flared with every movement, but it was interesting pain, something he could reflect on and marvel at. His body, once such a source of pride, was falling apart. His muscles were loose, his skin sallow. When he swiveled, his armor complained, already beginning to fail. Rust had crept across the face of his plate's metalwork, spidery and multi-hued, and he no longer scoured it off. Better just to let it all degrade, to slide down into a greasy mass. You could take real pleasure in that. The release, the freedom from all that endless drudgery. Now his mind worked differently. He regarded his fellow battle brothers and saw that they were changing too. It was almost childlike, this emergence into a new world, each one of them treading carefully, discovering slowly what they had been turned into and what they might yet become. So appropriate that it was taking place here, on the very world where everything had started. The Legion had spread out across the galaxy, waging their dreary war over 200 years, and were now back again, improved, released, on the cusp of marvels beyond imagination. The term apothecary was no longer really suitable, he thought. Something better would have to be concocted to reflect more closely the biological explorations that were now possible. For now, though, the old title would just have to do. Zadal Crozius served as a member of the Death Guard Legion during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. A veteran apothecary of the 14th Legion, responsible for the safeguarding of his kinsman's health. Though Zadal initially sought to cure his brethren of their afflictions, the insanity of warp corruption eventually took hold of his mind. Defending the Lionsgate spaceport during the Siege of Terra, following Mortarian's banishment by the Warhawk, Jagatai Khan, Crozius contacted First Captain Typhus to assume command of the Legion, abandoning the war zone, with no Primarch, to lead his men. Listening to the voice of the grandfather as it seeped into his mind, whispering lies laced with promises of power, Zadal Crozius abandoned his name following his surrender to Nurgle, assuming the title of Necrosius in its stead. His psychic talents burgeoning as he assumed the role of a Chaos Sorcerer, the so-called Hand of Nurgle pursued the arts of necromancy and demonic arcana in deference to his prior noble calling as a healer. Gathering despondent members of the Death Guard into his own warband, the Apostles of Contagion, Necrosius forsook his oaths to Mortarion, pledging his loyalty to the Plague God alone. Resentful of Typhus for his actions which condemned the Death Guard Legion as unwilling thralls to the Grandfather, for millennia, the Apostles of Contagion and Harbingers of the First Captain have fought one another in open conflict, committing atrocities such as the blight of the Eldari Maidenworld of Karol, though numerous reports cited Necrosius' end by the blades of the Assassinorum or unnatural infernos cast by the exile, Arzek Ahriman. His epitaph as the Undying is well earned. Fused to his ruined panoply of both Mark IV and 5 patterns of power armor, wielding a rusted force spear of unknown providence, the plague bolts fired from his bolt pistol, believed to be of his own invention, unleash virulent biological agents across the battlefield. Adorned with a blasphemous banner which displays the sigil of his warband, Necrosius' bloated form is festooned with harvested trophies and totems wrought from his campaigns, said to bolster his psychic abilities. Raising armies of plague zombies, using the arts of the Curse of Unbelief to bolster his demonkin and Astartes forces, the most devastating onslaught of such an army of detritus would be made during the Siege of Rax, a century following the warband's last recorded campaign. Descending upon the Armory world during 813.M41, for 17 years, the Apostles of Contagion spread plague and disease across the planet, using fell rituals and exhumation of fallen warriors. Aiding in the deaths of over 14 million loyal guardsmen and entire native population of 8 million souls, Necrosius withdrew from the Siege of Rax, content with the spread of the Grandfather's disgusting gifts.